July 20th, 1969. At some level, I realized that we had just become a different species. We were a species no longer confined to our planet, and I wanted to be a part of that group of explorers. That, I think, started me on a journey of curiosity. I think it started me on a lifelong journey to be able to fulfill that dream of one day flying in space. Bill Anders, who took the famous Earthrise photograph, said, "We went all this way to explore the moon, and what we discovered in the process was the Earth." I remember when I looked out the window, I was hit with this sense of extreme gratitude. Gratitude for the opportunity to see the planet from that vantage point, and gratitude for the gift of the planet that we've been given. It is just absolutely, indescribably, breathtakingly beautiful. I'm on this space station that was built by 15 different nations that somehow found a way to set aside our differences and work together and build probably the most complicated, complex structure ever built, and build it in space. Imagine what we could do if we could take that same level of cooperation and bring it down to the Earth's surface. I think there is something that changed in me, and I think that thing that changed is my definition of the word home. Traveling away from our hometown or our nation or our planet gives us the opportunity to look back upon ourselves and to realize what we have always been. That realization is one of the most important things that we get from exploration. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 1 of the Floating in Darkness live stream series. I am really thankful that you guys are along on this journey with me, so welcome aboard. This is the first of a 5-part series. And the objective of this series is to put some messages out into the world. Basically, we are in a situation right now where we have tons of crises that we're facing, and we need a pretty big course correction. And we need a course correction looking out on a time horizon of 50 years. And that was my motivation for writing the book Floating in Darkness, to put messages out into the world that will help nudge the trajectory of our society, hopefully, in the right direction. And so that is where these messages are going to come from. I want to remind everybody that this is supposed to be, and it's designed to be, interactive. So give me your questions and comments. I want you to be a part of this. I am going to have a special guest, a surprise guest, in a little bit, but I really want you to be a part of this conversation. And again, it's all centered on my upcoming book, Floating in Darkness. And so let me just give you a little introduction to that.
Good, coming out. All right. Welcome back to our other office. Yeah. Okay, I see 3 tabs. Good. Okay, safer handles are good. Hey, let me get a local.
Pure white light streams out from behind Earth. I am engulfed in colorless, radiant light that seems to be emanating out of cold emptiness and traveling through cold nothingness. The light streams over and around me, and a hint of peaceful serenity awakens inside me. Beyond my view of the sparkling ISS, a rocky coastline on an unrecognized continent drifts into view. Sunlight bathing newly awakened snow-capped mountains into the glory of a new day. I imagine there are people down there somewhere, just starting their day, who are also witnesses to this exquisite beauty from a different but no less compelling perspective. I wish we could share notes. The complex immensity of the ISS against the backdrop of our indescribably beautiful Earth 240 miles below thrusts me into a singularity. The entire universe peels away, the blanket of danger, the thoughts of upcoming tests, the feelings of fatigue, the excitement of being in space are all displaced by a singular vision of beauty. The truth that is blatantly apparent from this vantage point is that every living thing on the planet and the planet itself are inexplicably interconnected and interdependent. What's obvious from this vantage point of physical detachment from Earth is that we are not from Earth. We are of Earth. All of us. Every living creature. Well, I hope you like that excerpt, and I see a whole bunch of folks popping in. So, hey, Loretta, hey, Michael, hey, Ron, Linda. Oh, okay. I see Linda's here. We'll get back to you in a second. Jackie, Elisa, Mindy. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining. As I said up front, the motivation for writing the book and the motivation for the series is to hopefully help us with a course correction. We've got all these crises that we're facing. We've got racial unrest. We've got economic crises. We've got COVID-19. But I think all these are but symptoms, as bad as they are, they're but symptoms of the underlying root cause, the underlying crisis that we're facing. And that's that we're moving away from our true unity. We're moving away with this false sense of separation. And what I want to do is I want to play for you the prologue of Floating in Darkness in video format. And the purpose of the prologue is to serve as an allegory, it's deeply abstract. It's a little bit weird. I'll tell you that right now, that it's it's going to be a little bit weird. But as we're watching that, I want everybody to think about what it is they're watching. And I'm going to be looking at, as we're playing it, I'll be looking at the comments and questions. I might even stop it and pop in and discuss it. But as weird as it is, and metaphorical as it is, and abstract as it is, it's all there for a reason. It's to set up the major messages of the book. I'm so thankful that you're all here, and I also want to highlight the fact that we have a pre-order campaign for the book right now. Initially, the book was going to come out. We wanted it to come out in November, and that's because I saw this divisiveness and this polarization coming to a head. And the main message of the book is unifying. It's about overcoming our divisiveness, and so I wanted to get that out into the world, but we couldn't do that in time. But that doesn't stop us from getting the messages of the book out into the world, and that's why we have this series. But for everybody who's watching today, I've got this promo code that you can use, future. If you go to floatingindarkness.com/order and use future, you'll get 25% off on the pre-order. And we've got a big pre-order campaign going, so I encourage everybody to do that. So I think we're ready to start the prologue. Like I said, I want you to put in the comments or the questions what you think's going on, where this is going, and like I said, if possible, I'll pop in and we'll discuss it. And we could take a pause on the video at any time and discuss it. So with that, I'm going to introduce the prologue of Floating in Darkness. Prologue, the red shift of an expanding universe. In a single flash, the dark and still universe explodes in an exponential fury of light and energy. Specific points of matter align under the careful supervision of an invisible design. Creative intuition seamlessly merges with disciplined focus, forming specific points of universal matter. Each point of matter is imbued with an important, predestined, and necessary purpose that serves a greater plan, a note in a grand and ancient symphony. As more matter organizes into groups and functions, an altruistic hierarchy develops. At the top of the hierarchy, groups transmit and receive the most precious natural resource in the universe: information. Information ripples in waves and bursts from all points and in all directions. Individual points of matter communicate with each other over vast distances, a cosmic dance. As the complexity of the material universe reaches critical mass, a primordial certainty echoes throughout creation in a loud, simultaneous proclamation: we are one. A silent sleep then gently descends upon the creation. I am awake. For the first time, I realize that the communication I experience constantly is coming from me. I am awake is my first acknowledged thought. I am alone. If my awareness comes from me and there is nothing else, am I alone? Is my awareness all that exists? I hope not. I long for others. I long to belong. I feel. I feel something pushing against me that makes me wonder if I have boundaries. It seems that there may exist an other that is not me. It seems that this other just put pressure on me, which I suppose means I must have boundaries. Through touch, I can also determine this other's boundaries, the boundaries of my universe.
March 14th, 1961, in the news. A B-52 bomber carrying nuclear weapons crashed near Yuba City, California today, the second such crash in 2 months. The previous crash of a nuclear weapon-carrying B-52 occurred in late January near Goldsboro, North Carolina.
I hear. All right, I'm gonna pause it there for a second, and I want to give you a hint on what's going on. It's not going to be a big hint, but my special guest that we're going to have on in a little bit is the co-star of the prologue. So there's two main characters in this story that you're hearing, and I'm not talking about like a newsreel that you just saw. That's something else. But there's two main characters in this. Well, let's put it this way. There's two main literal characters. There's many, many characters in this, but from a literal foundation, there's two main characters. And my special guest will be the co-star of that. And so, like I said, give me your comments, give me your questions. Let me know what you think's going on here, and we'll talk about it when we can. All right, back to the prologue. Not long ago, I started hearing things other than my thoughts. None of what I hear makes any sense. Could there be more to reality than what I sense? Another world? Others like me somewhere? Am I hearing the thoughts of others?
April 12th, 1961, breaking news. Russia has put the first man in orbit around Earth and returned him safely. A Soviet Air Force major, Yuri Gagarin, 27, father of two, circled Earth in 89.1 minutes before returning. The official Russian news agency TASS reported. Gagarin had launched from a top-secret Soviet military installation within the Kazakh Soviet Socialist Republic and later landed at 2:55 Eastern Standard Time. Upon his return, Gagarin commented, "I saw for the first time how beautiful our planet is. Mankind, let us preserve and increase this beauty and not destroy it."
The sounds I hear have changed. Until recently, they seemed strange, distant, and random. But now, I occasionally hear muffled thoughts. I can't make sense of the sounds, but they definitely resemble the pattern of my thoughts. I see. For the first time, I realize that I have been floating in darkness. I didn't know what darkness was until I saw light. Now my world cycles between periods of complete darkness and a perceptible dim red glow. Within the red glow, I can make out shapes, I can determine the direction of sound. I am beginning to see my world.
May 5th, 1961, the United States first spaceman, Alan B. Shepard Jr., rocketed briefly across the threshold of space today and landed safely after a 5,000-mile-an-hour journey that carried him 115 miles high and 302 miles downrange. The pickup occurred at 10:53 a.m., 19 minutes after the Redstone booster blasted off from Cape Canaveral at 10:34 a.m. The 37-year-old Navy commander's good condition was evident throughout the flight when Shepard reported such things as "what a beautiful sight" in describing Earth below.
I love. Ever since I first saw light, I feel something I can't fully explain. I feel that I am wrapped in warmth and well-being, that I am protected and cared for. I am starting to believe that I am not alone. A strong desire to be with others is awakening within.
May 14th, 1961. Today, as a Greyhound bus arrived in Anniston, Alabama, carrying so-called Freedom Riders, an angry mob of about 200 white people surrounded the bus. The driver continued past the local bus station, followed by the mob in automobiles. When the bus's tires blew out, a firebomb was thrown into the bus. The Freedom Riders, who had been seeking to test the segregation of interstate transportation facilities, escaped the bus as it burst into flames, only to be brutally beaten by members of the surrounding mob. Other Freedom Riders traveling on a second bus arrived in Birmingham, Alabama. An angry white mob, many of whom brandished metal pipes, beat those riders too. Birmingham Public Safety Commissioner Bull Connor said he knew that violence awaited the Freedom Riders, but that he posted no police protection at the station because it was Mother's Day.
It is becoming clear. All right, we'll take another break. Lots of great ideas coming in here. As you can see, there's some juxtapositioning going on between some peaceful, serene scenes and some not so peaceful and serene scenes. Let's see. There was is this awakening to the self? Was one of them. Let me just say this: there are no wrong answers so far, and actually, I don't think there'll be wrong answers at all, because part of the objective here is for people to pull their own meaning out of this. But what I will say is, what we're watching right now has an intended literal meaning and many, many layers of underlying metaphorical meanings. And this is serving as an allegory for the messages that are going to be contained in the book. And so all of the metaphorical meanings that have been popped up into the comments so far have all been intended, and there's a lot more there. So I'm probably going to let this play to the end now. I'm not sure how much more we have, maybe about 5 more minutes. And then we'll jump right into the discussion. And again, the co-star, think about who the co-star could be of this prologue, is going to be joining me soon. That I am indeed hearing the thoughts of others. I don't know what they're saying, but I can tell when they're happy and when they are sad. Why are these others such a mystery to me? Why can't I see them or speak to them? Are they like me? I don't know who I am or what I am, but I love where I am. Whenever I feel the slightest need or discomfort, I am immediately soothed. I feel constant, sustaining, and protecting energy flowing to me. I suspect there's a larger world than what I am presently experiencing.
August 13th, 1961. In the early hours of the morning, the quietness of East Berlin's deserted streets was shattered by screaming sirens as police cars sped through the city. This occurred shortly after the Communist Warsaw Pact states declared that effective controls must be put into force on the borders of West Berlin because of a perfidious agitation campaign by the West. As of now, the border between East and West Berlin is effectively closed. East German troops are standing guard at the Brandenburg Gate, the main crossing point between the eastern and western sectors. This will affect thousands of East Berliners who daily commute to work in the western sector. The closing of the border came after East Berliners had waited nervously yesterday for the Iron Curtain to ring down on refugee escape routes to the west.
I now realize that I live in 2 worlds. One is a world of alternating darkness and dim red light, where everything is familiar, comfortable, and right. But every now and then, I feel this familiar world slipping away. all that is familiar starts to vanish, only to be replaced with a new world that has no boundaries. This other world is the opposite of familiar, and everything is novel and exciting. In it, I see a blur of red, purple, blue, orange, green, and turquoise, each in turn becoming dominant. Here, I have freedom to do whatever I like. Here, I see many others with unique forms. Somehow, I communicate with these others effortlessly. I hear their thoughts. They hear mine. It's as if their thoughts are mine and mine are theirs. Though they are separate from me, an unbreakable force binds us. In this boundaryless world, we can simultaneously understand how everything is intimately tied together and dependent on each other, while not losing the realization of our own distinct existence. Normally, just when I really start to get used to this boundaryless world, the world of alternating darkness and dim red light creeps back in, and I return to the familiar, comfortable, and right. But just now, while deep into the world without boundaries, I feel vibrations. These vibrations are barely perceptible and don't distract me from enjoying the freedom of the boundaryless world. Slowly and steadily, however, they increase in strength to a crescendo and then decrease beyond my perception over and over. I imagine a giant being many times bigger than my entire world slowly approaching me, coming so close that I feel I can reach out and touch it. I haven't yet worked up the courage to reach out before the vibrations retreat. I'm not sure which one of my worlds I'm in. I feel stronger and faster vibrations. They jolt me back into the certainty of the world of alternating darkness and dim red light. Suddenly, things no longer feel familiar, comfortable, or right. The vibrations become almost unbearable and push me in from all sides. They squeeze me so tight that I feel part of me spilling outside of my boundaries. Just when I think I'm about to turn inside out, the world around me expands back to its usual size. Then it shrinks again, this time around the top of my head. What's happening? Suddenly, my head feels cold. The rest of me, however, feels squeezed and hot. Am I dying? My world is crashing in on me. If this continues, I will surely cease to exist. I want this to stop. I want to return to the familiar, comfortable, and right. Then, harsh, colorless, radiant light engulfs me, and I am no longer squeezed at all. I am bathed in cold white light coming from every direction, streaming over and around me. I can now clearly hear thoughts that are not my own. I still don't know what they're saying, but for the first time, I am sure they are not from me. Although I am no longer being squeezed, my insides are pulling in from my core. A great pressure is building up outside of me that could destroy me. I need to fight to stay alive. To survive, I must let go, but how? The link between me and from where I came must be severed, and that terrifies me. Then the link is cut, and like that, a part of me opens up and the great pressure enters me. I feel relief. For the first time, I hear something that I know is coming from me. I find myself taking in some substance from outside of myself and giving it back, all accompanied by a strange, loud sound. What is this substance? Where does it come from? It seems to be keeping me alive. I am being held. I now fully understand that I am not alone. There are others out there. You are one of them. And I am sharing this story with you and all the others. Another is looking at me. I see joy, love. I stare back at this other and notice the bright white light is softly dimming. I feel myself slowly being pulled back to the world without boundaries.
October 30th, 1961. Russia has exploded the world's largest ever nuclear device, provoking widespread condemnation from around the world. Called the Tsar Bomba, it is believed to be 50 megatons, equivalent to 50 million tons of TNT. This caused the biggest ever man-made explosion in history. The test, the 26th in the current series, was carried out over the Arctic island of Novaya Zemlya, despite repeated objections from the West. Shockwaves from the explosion were first picked up at the Seismological Institute at Uppsala in Sweden at 0830 hours GMT.
Hey everyone, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that video of the prologue narration. As advertised, you probably found it a little weird. I know I found it a little weird when I wrote it, but everything in there is there for a reason. And my goal and objective in writing the prologue was to have a reader, as they read it, say to themselves, yeah, this is a little weird. I don't know where this is going, but I'm very interested in where it's going. I want to hang on to the journey. I want to join this journey so I could find out where this is going. And so I hope that's how you viewed it, and that you're along for this journey with us, because I think it's going to be a very fruitful journey of discovery and of learning and of self-exploration is maybe maybe a good word. But the prologue has a literal meaning, and then many layers of underlying metaphorical meanings. And everything, both the literal meaning and the metaphorical meaning, and everything that was contained within, is there to set up the messages that are going to be contained in the main body of the book. In particular, the last part of the prologue is there to serve as hopefully a very powerful juxtaposition between the ending of the prologue and the opening of the first chapter. And so, but that's a that'll be a topic for another discussion. But I am glad that you're on this journey with us, and with that, I want to bring on board this conversation my co-star of the prologue, and I'm not going to say why this person is the prologue. I'll let you figure that out if you haven't already figured out who it is. But if you haven't figured it out yet, as my guest and I have a conversation, if you do figure out who the importance of the co-star of the prologue and what their role it was in the prologue, then put that in the comments, and we'll take a look at that. So with that, I want to introduce to everybody the co-star of the prologue to Floating in Darkness. Linda Lichtblau, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Doing good. Linda's coming to us from Port St. Lucie, Florida, from her studio. She is a world-renowned artist who paints under the name Linda Rellis, which is her maiden name. And she's joining us today from the studio. So thanks for joining us, Linda.
Pleasure.
So there might be some people out there watching this right now who have not yet figured out your role in this story, your role particularly in the prologue. Actually, you're not just in the prologue, you're in various places throughout the book. So maybe to start out, can you share with everybody your initial reaction to what you read in the prologue when you first read it?
My initial interpretation of it was that it was the physical development of a new being, and experiencing all of the new sensations that one would feel at the beginning, and floating in darkness physically, but yet oblivious to all the things that were going on in the outside world. And that's where I stopped, basically.
Okay. All right.
It wasn't, as I read it, I read the prologue a second time, and I began to think about the events that you mentioned that were going on in 1961. And it was such a sharp contrast between, the innocence of the beginning and then the realities of the harshness of man's abilities for destruction.
All right.
And then I started thinking about lots of other things about which I'm not going to tell you about right now.
All right. Well, fair enough. Fair enough. So let's talk about the literal meaning, right? And so, how do we say this without giving the whole thing away? So you say that what you got from the reading was that it was the development of a being, the physical development of a being, and there was a juxtaposition between what the being thought its universe was and an outer world that was not as peaceful, let's say, as
Exactly.
the world. And so I remember the first time you read this, you were not aware of your starring role in it. You didn't recognize the first time you read it the part that you played in that. I don't know if there's a way for you to talk about that without giving away your role, but if there is.
Yeah, it was completely foreign because I was getting a perspective from a different being's view. And I didn't know where it was going at first.
Yeah.
I have to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
But
so maybe it's time to reveal why you're the co-star of that. And so maybe as a way to set that stage is the purpose of Floating in Darkness, of the entire book, the vehicle that I used in Floating in Darkness is an autobiographical narrative where specific events in my life, fighting in combat, ejecting from an F-16, living on the bottom of the ocean, living in space, facing all of the challenges, living in a world where current events were pushing us to the brink of destruction. There was a lot of things that occurred in my life. So to use those events that happened in my life as a allegory for the evolution of society, not only where we've been, but where we need to go. And so I wrote the book in first person present tense. So it should read like a novel because of the present tense and the ability in present tense to be able to do scene development and things like that, and to bring the reader along with you on the journey as it's happening. And so the autobiographical narrative, the first person present tense autobiographical narrative, starts at the moment of conception. So the entire prologue was simulated to be written in vitro. So the whole prologue are the events of the fetus known as Ron's development. And therefore, if that's the literal meaning of the prologue, then the reason why Linda Lichtblau is the co-star is
I'm your mom.
You're my mom. You're my mom. You're that. How did I say it? You're that which is not me. Now I forgot exactly what I wrote. You are that which is not me. Right. So you were the boundaries of my universe for the first 9 months of my existence on this planet. And so there's going to be, a metaphor used for that in the development of life on Earth and the evolution of life on Earth, and to bringing us to the point where we've been, and like I said, where we need to go. So with that out of the bag, what were the things that you were holding back discussing before?
I really got carried away because I started thinking about the Buddhist and Hindus' beliefs of reincarnation, of being reborn. And a new life is a new beginning and new hope to make things better. And so, man, as we get older, have the opportunity to have our own rebirth through awareness and knowledge. And I think that's what the train of thought that I started to use to interpret other things that you had written. And, as an infant struggles to be born, man struggles to break through his own path to enlightenment. And the other thing that came to mind was that you were talking about how you were connected to the universe, or I forgot what the beginning was, but the most important thing you got was information. And if as humans, we all are born with the same
Blueprint.
there you go, same blueprint, we all have knowledge. It seemed to me that there might be some sort of uh, collective consciousness, amongst people, innately unable to have that collective consciousness. And with all the distractions that we're faced as we go through life, ordinary problems, people lose sight of the fact that we aren't just one person. We're connected to everybody else in some ways. And the people who become more aware of that are people who do things on more of a global scale, things that don't just benefit themselves, but benefit many others, like that Pakistani girl, Malala, and she was just trying to get education for girls. And she brought that out. And then people started thinking about that, how unfair it is that girls are not given the opportunity to broaden their knowledge in other countries. Mm-hmm. And then you have that other girl, what was her name? Greta. She was from Denmark, I think, or Sweden. And she started championing the cause of environmental issues. And in doing so, she was bringing up the consciousness of a lot of people, young people, who became aware. These are problems we're all faced with as a global community.
Yep.
So, I started getting carried away with that whole theme.
Yeah, well, good. That's what that's the intention is for people to bring their own meaning out of it too. I mean, there's a lot of intended metaphorical meanings. You're touching on some of them. Most of them center around the awareness that there's a bigger world out there than what we normally perceive as being the extent of our reality. There's a much bigger thing at play, and that shifting our perspective. And I use the term Dolly Zoom throughout the book, and I'll explain it in a minute. But to Dolly Zoom our perspective to see other things. But in the prologue, juxtaposed against the tranquil scenes in the womb were the events that were happening in the world. And so we had the first launch of a human in space, Yuri Gagarin. We had the first American, Alan Shepard. We had the civil rights unrest that was in the United States at the time, and actually throughout the world in some cases, epitomized by the Freedom Riders and what they had to endure. We had the Berlin Wall being erected. And then on the very day that I was born, when you were giving birth to me, on the other side of the world was the largest man-made explosion to this day with the Tsar Bomba that the Soviet Union had detonated, which, as I said, is going to really serve as a juxtaposition against the opening of Chapter 1. And I won't give that away, but I hope you find it interesting, the scene and the setting of Chapter 1, where it opens in relation to that. But there are, many, many other intended metaphorical meanings and Easter eggs thrown in there throughout the prologue. And so I know that we had discussed this before, and you had shared with me some of the things some of the similarities with what you read in the prologue with what you experienced in your own life, and how I remember you had told me that when you were younger that you basically thought the universe was maybe extended beyond the Hudson River, I don't know, but barely extending beyond yourself, right? And I think all of us, and that's in the prologue, my universe was myself. All I knew of the universe was what I could experience with my senses, right? And I didn't know anything beyond that, right? And I remember you sharing with me that many people live their whole lives in that state of not really realizing that there's a much, much bigger universe out there, a much, much bigger world.
Yeah, people tend to stay in their own communities with people who are have similar cultures, and they don't get to really fully understand the variety, of people that are in the world. Somebody said something to me once. It was a racial comment, or actually it was a conversation that a mother had with the daughter, and the daughter said maybe she had gotten some bullying at school for being black. And how the mother explained it to her, she said, think of the world as a garden. And if you only have one particular flower in that garden, it'd be a very boring, ordinary garden. We need a lot of variety, and you need to understand every plant that's in your garden. And I thought that was really a very profound thing to say to a child, because it makes you become more aware of, we all have differences, different backgrounds, different cultures, but yet it's beautiful. Everybody is still human. It's only one race, but there's so much variety and there's so much interest in what everybody's differences can bring. And so I thought that was a very meaningful thing to say to her daughter, and I never forgot that. That was Ruth London, by the way.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Who had been the book?
That's right.
Yeah, the story of Ruth London is in the book.
Yeah.
So in chapter 1, actually. Yeah.
Oh.
Cool.
Yeah, she was a very wise woman.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I know that you, in the past, when we discussed this, you had a lot to say about empathy, that you brought some lessons of empathy out of the prologue as well, of being able to see other perspectives of that. Does any of that ring out right now with you?
Well, I just know that with media coverage as it is today, you really get to see the suffering of other people, all over the world. And it's almost a call to action, or it is a call to action to a lot of people to try to alleviate some of that. And I think that when you're in the dark about what's going on and anything outside of your own community, you don't have the empathy or the opportunity to have empathy for other people. So that, I think, as much as the media is criticized, a lot of it is very helpful in just bringing awareness about a lot of different problems that we face as a global community.
Yeah. And so I mentioned the term Dolly Zoom before, and I said I would explain what I mean by that. And many of you already know what I mean by that. But a major theme that I bring out in the book is this thing called Dolly Zoom. And a Dolly Zoom is a term that I borrowed from cinematography, and it means basically dollying or rolling the camera back as you zoom the lens in, or vice versa. And it was used in films like Jaws and Spy Games and Vertigo and some other films. And it serves to heighten the viewer's experience, right? To give depth to a scene, to challenge the viewer's perception of reality as the background stretches and the foreground remains in the same spot. And I borrowed that term because I think it's a perfect description of what we need to do to a lot of the situations on our planet, a lot of the challenges facing us and the problems facing us. And that's to zoom out to the widest possible geographic perspective that we can. But as we zoom out to that big picture perspective, we don't lose focus on the worm's eye details on the ground. We don't zoom out to the point where people become statistics or numbers on a spreadsheet or a consumer group or a workforce or whatever it is. They maintain their identity as a valued member of our one human family, right? So it's the keeping in focus of the very microscopic as we zoom out to the macroscopic. But it also has a temporal component to it as well, in that we have to zoom out to the long term. And by long term, I mean multi-generational. So for every decision or policy or course of action that we take, we need to think about what is the effect on our great-grandchildren? What is the multi-generational effect of this decision? And normally, all we focus on is the next shareholder report, the next election cycle. We're very, very short-sighted in that. But we can't just zoom out to the multi-generational and lose the short term as well. So we have to both are important and both have to be balanced. The last part of it is a part that really came to me on a spacewalk. And when I was out on a spacewalk and I was looking at this incredible scene below me, 240 miles below me, I realized that my perspective of this beautiful planet was changing by 5 miles every second. And the power of seeing multiple perspectives, two perspectives gives you stereoscopic vision, and you can start to see 3D, you can start to see the depth. The more perspectives we bring to the equation, the deeper the understanding of the situation and the challenges and the potential solutions, because we see the true depth of it. And so I think that is a really important theme that is throughout the book, of being able to do that. And so going back to your point, Mom, all these different flowers in the garden are representative of different perspectives.
Right.
And we as a species get our strength from the diversity of our perspectives, of the diversity of our approaches, particularly to problem solving. And when we put ourselves in a narrow, echo chamber walled container, we miss out on a great deal of the value that other people and other perspectives bring. And that's a major tenet in Floating in Darkness.
Well, I think it comes through as you read the book. I think that comes through, and it gives you a lot to think about as far as an individual. What can you do?
Well, the book is definitely a call to action.
Yeah.
But it's not an in-your-face call to action, I don't think.
No.
But I hope people find it really interesting. I hope people find it provocative, provoking thought and deep introspection, and to challenge their assumptions and to challenge their view of the world, because none of us has a completely accurate view of the world. None of us has a completely accurate and comprehensive view of reality. And so, life is a journey of learning, and we have to continually expand our perspectives and expand our understanding. And you can't learn anything if you already have all the answers.
Yeah.
So I think what I humbly am presenting is a unique perspective on this thing we call reality, and this thing we call the world. So
well, it was a very interesting book. I have to say that.
Yeah. Well,
I read it.
would you actually pay money to read it, though?
I did pay money to read it.
You did? How did you pay money to read it?
When you had this, what is it called? Pre-published.
You bought one of those?
Yes, of course I did.
You're my mom. You're like the only person I would give a free copy to.
Oh,
well, thank you. Wow.
Of course. Right. It was well worth it.
That's what I was going to give you for Christmas.
Well, give me another one.
Well, Mom, thanks for jumping on and sharing your insight, and thanks for being the co-star of the Prologue. I couldn't have done it without you. And so, and thank you for all the lessons throughout my life that you've taught me, and particularly in continuing to search for meaning and to search for truth, and to continue to keep an open mind about things, because I think that's
very important.
That's very important.
Yeah. You're a good boy.
I'm a good boy. Thank you. So everyone, say goodbye to Mom. Thanks for stopping in all the way from Port St. Lucie, Florida.
Right. Okay. Take care.
Right. And thanks again to Mom for being here for that. That's wonderful. And so what I want to do is I'm going to just break and show you just a quick short video, and then I'd like to jump back and really get into answering your questions and your comments that have come in throughout the program so far. So with that, let's cut to the video. The origin story of my evolution began in the embryonic ocean of my mother's womb. 9 months later, I left the familiarity of this maternal ocean for solid ground. 19 years later, I extended my life into the ocean of air blanketing our planet. 27 years later, I climbed above the ocean of air, and my life was elevated into space. Humanity's origin story begins in the prehistoric ocean of Mother Earth. 4 billion years later, life was compelled to claw itself out of the familiarity of the ocean for solid ground. Life left the relative ease of the ocean for the promise of something better, fighting the crushing gravitational pull of the planet the whole way. The journey out of the ocean led to new adaptations, including the arrival of humans. 400 million years after life transcended the oceans, humanity extended itself into the ocean of air blanketing our planet. 58 years later, humanity elevated itself above the ocean of air and into space. Detaching from the planet enabled us to look back and see what we have always been: one single human family with a common origin and a shared future. On May 31st, 2008, my story intersected with humanity's origin story when I became the 478th person to leave the planet. This intersection coincided with humanity and all life on Earth, facing a crisis that threatens the very survival of life here. A crisis that humans must overcome. A crisis that requires a giant leap in humanity's evolutionary process. A life or death crisis that humanity can only solve by transcending individual and collective ego and embracing the true nature of its interdependence with every living thing on the planet and the planet itself. The crisis? We must evolve, see, understand, and act on the fact that we are all part of one human family, or we will perish. On the news today, you will not see many, if any, stories that illustrate humanity's evolution towards a more unified existence. Instead, the news bombards us with examples pointing to humanity's de-evolution to more primitive forms. It shows rampant divisiveness fracturing our species along national, parochial, partisan, racial, and religious lines. The news doesn't reflect the complete reality of the story. An awakening consciousness, a blossoming unity, could help us overcome the divisive darkness. A darkness that surrounds us because we, like the prisoners in the allegory of Greek philosopher Plato's cave, are blind. The prisoners in Plato's cave lived their entire lives chained inside of it, facing a wall. They could see only the shadows cast upon the wall, nothing more. Sounds that emanated from behind them echoed off the walls, leading them to believe that the shadows were making these sounds. They believed in the shadows because they had never seen anything else. They knew no better life, so they did not desire to leave the cave. One day, one of the prisoners broke free of his chains and found another world where his eyes slowly adjusted, and he discovered that reality was not as he thought. He then realized that the shadows he had seen his whole life were mere projections of this outside world, which was superior in every way to his old home. With this new knowledge, he sympathized with those still trapped in the cave and desired to bring them out of it and into the light of 16 sunrises illuminating an awe, wonder, and miracle-filled world. This book is that true story. Well, welcome back. So I hope you like that. That is the narration of the introduction to the book Floating in Darkness, and it comes right after the prologue. So it's kind of, if you didn't get the prologue as you're reading it, hopefully that will lead you along the way. Thanks for all the comments about my mom. I appreciate that. Thanks for saying goodbye. So we're coming up to the end of the hour. I want to devote the rest of the time to answering your questions. and to have a discussion with you. I'm so thankful that you guys hung along this journey to the end. Thank you for doing that. And yeah, we do have a couple minutes left, so we could get into a conversation. But I do want to say that this is the first in the series. This is the most abstract and most metaphorical, maybe the weirdest. But we're going to get in the subsequent episodes. We're really going to get dive deep into the messages of the book in Overcoming Divisiveness. We have an episode on home, on what that word means, on the importance of the definition of the word home. The next episode, which is March 24th, same time, 10 a.m. Pacific time, is all about overcoming divisiveness. And as we all know, we're living in very polarized and divisive times. So that should be a good one. And we're going to have episodes on unity. And that's what this is all about. It's about recognizing our true underlying unity and seeing the strength from that. I'll just pop up a couple of comments that came in. Thanks, Luke, for that. Yeah, there's going to be, throughout the book, there's going to be a lot of hints back to the womb, the umbilical cord, and breath. There's a lot of discussions about breath and how and how that relates to evolution. And one of the things that I will say is that the writing of the book is an evolution itself. And so if you hit parts, if you read the book and you hit parts that you think are a little tough or maybe you don't agree with, know that it's probably going to change because the book is an evolution. So the language in the beginning of the book is different from the language at the end of the book. The worldview in the beginning of the book is different than the worldview at the end of the book. So everything evolves and changes. And so I also want to remind everybody, and let me pop this up again, that we have this special offer that we're going to do for this episode that we can get 25% off. We'll probably keep this promo code active for a while, but the 25% we can only keep on for a little bit. So please join this journey. We want to hear what you have to say about the messages of the book and where this is going. It is a call to action. Here's from Ron Rosano. Thanks, Ron. It was lovely to have my mom on. That was fun. Yep. I owe a lot. I owe a lot to Mom. That's for sure. Yep. And one of the main tenets is trying to increase empathy. Increasing empathy that leads to altruism. So with that, I'm going to bring this to a close. I thank you all so much for being on this journey with us. It's going to be a fun journey, I promise you. And I'm looking forward to continuing this as we go. Again, March 24th at 10 a.m. Is the next episode, and that's going to be all about overcoming divisiveness. So with that, thanks everybody, and see you soon. See you next week or in 2 weeks.